Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to have you with us to participate and share in the 5th webinar pre-event of Share Bucharest 2020. Our host today will be Florin Mindirigiu, the founder of Share Architects, and Andreea Robomovila, the editor of Share Architects.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Andrea. Nice to have you today to our webinar in Share for Bucharest Share in physical format. But today we meet in a virtual conference, and I want to say you hello again and to wait you in July, maybe in July, I'm not very sure now, for the Share in physical format in Bucharest. Our date is 16th of July, but we'll hope to be there and to have Share in July in Bucharest. For beginning, I want to ask Andrea, our main editor for our books in Share Society, to say hello and speech. The microphone, please.
Hello, do you hear me? Hello, everyone. Hello, Florin. I'm Andrea, publisher for Share. I'm very excited to welcome our very special guests today. As now that we have more time for us and we guess for reading, let me introduce you today our latest editorial project that has been developed during the latest 2 years based on 100 interviews that were taken from our guest speakers. You can find this amazing book following and visiting our website. Designing the Profile of the Future Architect is truly a condensed book of valuable thoughts, a collection of 100 visions from architects from 13 countries in a debate about the future of architecture. But we won't stop here. We will keep sharing, as this is our value, and we acknowledge that everyone has so much to share. Our editorial project will continue with a sequencing project titled Transforming the World Through Architecture that will be developed in a different way due to the current situation. Via online webinars, we invited architects of the world to continue by thinking and talking about what they advise for and what they do now, what they propose, and this will build a corpus of knowledge from their answers, which will be embodied in this new editorial project. But not only their visions, your opinion is also valuable, and you are invited to, as participants, to share with us your thoughts that can be built together in this new endeavor. You are invited to share your ideas on the address listed on the screen. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. Now, I'm very honored to introduce the moderators of today's webinar, Emily Vănescu, the president of the Bucharest territorial branch of the Order of Architects from Romania, and Martin Panovski, the president of the Association of Architects of Macedonia and founder of Radius Architects.
Hello, hello, nice to meet you, to see you again. We have to say something at the beginning, no? I want to thank to Florin because he's always too kind. Each year he invites me, and each year I have to announce a new competition that the Bucharest Order of Architects organized for the architects, and not only for architects. But what is nice that this week we will launch actually 2 major competitions. One competition is launched in the morning today. It's about social housing. It's a competition with Habitat for Humanity Romania, and it's a very, very nice competition for building 4 units for housing, social housing. This program a little bit new as we speak at the quality in Romania. And the second competition is an international competition to design the quay of Dâmbovița River. It's downtown Bucharest. It's a public international competition, and is the first kind for Bucharest, this competition. So for us, it's a lot. And I think Florin also has a lot to work till August. Okay, we will wait for you for we invite to you this competition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we can start, Emil, and after we'll see what happened with the microphone.
So I'm very honored to introduce Mr. Radu Teacă. It's one of the great architects from Romania. I would like to make some statements. Radu Teacă is the founder of the Architecture Office Art Line in Romania, author of numerous projects including office and commercial buildings and individual houses. He received multiple awards such as prizes for National Architecture Biennale and the Bucharest Architecture Annual, or the prize for Romania Academy for the favorite European Cultural Center. I'm very honored. Please, Radu, please, for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me a little while to manage the buttons here. I am too old. To improve my English, I'll read from some thoughts I just wrote on the paper. And now you'll see the presentation. There are several projects made in our office because we have no time to design something special for COVID-19. This maybe is too early. I'll read to you some thoughts about the problems regarding post-epidemic with COVID-19. The name of my speech is Architecture as Shelter. COVID-19, such highly abstract name, has changed our lives in a definitive and extremely real way. The essence with which will remain even if we have a vaccine is a threat. We realized we are so vulnerable to this virus that we'll not be able to afford to forget it. The anxiety of another pandemic will be part of our thoughts, of our consciousness. Maybe I'm a little bit too much apocalyptical, but you have to think of this. It is already a recurrent theme in urban planning, the way cities will look like after the pandemic ends. Of course, the essence of this question remains available also at a smaller scale, that of the architecture. Not a long time ago, I was asked what I believed I had learned until then staying at home from this situation generated by COVID-19, and I answered that I realized home is more important than house. If home is the cosmos where walls agglutinate along with feelings, moments of joy or sadness, and the evenings which they sheltered, the idea of a certain interiorization is crystallized in which the vital interior space becomes the opposite of a hostile exterior space. From a cultural point of view, architecture as a shelter is an oxymoron. While architecture deals with a cultural space, the shelter is primary, primitive form of dwelling, and its main function is to offer protection from the hostile world. Maybe between shelter and architecture, like concepts, we should insert the French term habitacle, which means a passenger compartment of a car, a concept oriented exclusively towards functionality without aesthetic or artistic qualities. The future of architecture is an art which is capable of having meanings, metaphors, doesn't sound very promising. If in the 20th century, thanks to the new construction material and technologies, architecture was liberated of necessity, this is this quote from Berdyaev, an Orthodox philosopher, being able to confront gravity, earthquakes, winds, etc., managing even to be in a vanguard of change for the first time, considering postmodernism and the constructivism, it can now be seen again burdened by numbers, protection requirements, taking into account the communication with the exterior, but also the need to offer a supportable place for isolation. Perhaps we will change our perception on dwelling, especially on collective or semi-collective housing. The relationship with the outside will be a much more coercive one, transforming itself into a filter for disinfection and equipment removal. The problem of interior circulations will also have to be rethought, since stairs and elevators, especially the latter, become vulnerable places during an epidemic. The idea of a workspace at home comprising one or more offices to enable work simultaneously for more multiple family members, I think it is absolutely necessary, idea which will bring interferences in the furniture design. Moreover, the concept of smart house with the emphasis on media communication in the context, which it becomes a replacement of a public space or of direct meetings, is a catalyst for communication. Furthermore, the concept of passive house becomes an obligation. Energy autonomy is vital for a war where energy suppliers can fall. This obligative character will have a role too in encumbering the architectural expressivity. It is likely that collective housing units will need to have an autonomy also in terms of provision of food and other daily use products. Here I think Le Corbusier with the Unité d'Habitation in Marseille becomes at last actual. I do not believe the isolation of an individual or a family must also mean isolation from nature. Interiorization will have to be doubled by the possibility to live alongside nature. This aspect, concretized through the creation of small gardens, interior or relationship with the exterior but protected, must represent an important goal for the architect. In this context, even though it is an urban problem, I wonder and I fear what might happen with the public space. We should not forget the European culture and civilization have on their base the agora as materialization of public space where people had the possibility of communication, of a metabolism of ideas. Public space does not relate only to the concrete reality, through piazzas, streets, or squares, but also to the Western collective unconsciousness. If we think of Hyde Park, where speeches are held outside the built environment, I'm afraid cities will not have any more preoccupation for public space, for beauty, and they will focus on more on the safety of the citizens. Generally, architecture flourished in the fertile periods of culture and civilization, in Pericles' Athens, in Lorenzo the Magnificent's Florence, in the Western world after the Second World War, unless during difficult times like the one we are going through and which opens as a Pandora's box. It seems very probable that a great part of humanity's resources will be allocated to health care, sanitary protection, and less to culture, thus also less to architecture. Thank you very much. I'm short. Thank you.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, finally. Okay, I don't know what happened. Sorry for the technical issues. So I have to go with my welcoming speech. I want to welcome every participant in the webinar. We're here to talk about future of the architecture. The topic changing the world through architecture is a topic that has been going on with Share Architects in this past year or some, maybe more. But I think that the things are pretty much changing with this new situation in the world. So maybe the topics of architects are changing rapidly because of this pandemic. Personally, I don't know if architecture as itself can make such difference in this pandemic, because as we all know, maybe this pandemic will be over soon, hopefully, and architecture as itself is too slow to have an impact. But nevertheless, the memory of this pandemic probably will go on in the future. So what we are experiencing in Macedonia, I think that plenty of the countries are experiencing, is the lack of public space. Because in Macedonia we have a culture that goes, the socializing mostly is done in restaurants and cafes. As now the restaurants and cafes are closed, the public spaces are too crowded. This is something new, and this is something different that is going on for these 2 months. Of course, there is the fact of the importance of our homes. And the one thing that I think that the humanity will learn is that it's more valuable to invest in your home than to invest in your car or something else that it's not really necessary. So probably this is a beginning for some talks where we can find another way to have the architectural theory goes, because I think that nowadays, in the past 10 years, the architectural theory is in crisis when we talk architectural theory versus practice. So I think that this is possibly something that we can discuss in the future. So I would like to announce one of the architects that will have their presentation. The presentation is named The Hidden Dimensions, and it's by our colleague Milike Altinšik. I think that I pronounced it good. She is the founder of Milike Altinšik Architects. The studio is founded in 2013. Milike is Altinšik Architects has won several international awards and plenty of local Turkish awards. I can just say that they won European 40 Under 14 in 2018. FEIDAT Designed Award, that's Far Eastern International Digital Architecture Design Award in 2007, and Swiss Art Award in 2007 also. From the plenty of work, maybe the one that we can divide is Istanbul TV Radio Tower, which is under construction at the moment. So I will ask Ms. Altinšik to take over with her presentation.
Hello. So today, thank you for the introduction, and I'm honored to be part of this webinar today. I would like to discuss with you about the hidden dimension. Actually, in this current situation which pandemic created for us, the social distancing and its architectural influence become very important in our daily life for today and for future. And oops, 1 second. Sorry. The pandemic has been started actually changing the human behavior fundamentally, especially related to social distancing. It became very important the way how we think about the public space. As Mr. Radu and Martin mentioned, that we all realize that how important is our home and our dwelling where we live, and the way how we have been spending time there became much more important, and the way how we design spaces for our living environment will be important. But on the other hand, in big cities and also in any other big city which is actually surrounding our globally the world, the density will be one of the most important things which affects actually the public space. So as architects, we don't design for past, we design for future, and this pandemic is putting in front of us certain regulations related to health issues, especially we need to learn how to live hands-off. And for us, this is something really very difficult, because in our cultures, like every country or every city has different cultures, but still in the cities, we learned how to live in density. And if you put this social distance rule, which is related such as 5.5 meter distance and having hands-off public space regulations, this will create definitely, if they don't find a solution for vaccination in, let's say, next 1 year or maybe 2-3 years, we don't know, then we need to really find certain, we need to look for some solutions. At least we need to discuss about it. In that regards, if we revisit the American anthropologist Edward Hall, who defined the term proxemics in 1963. Actually, proxemics is a study of human use of space where we can see the population density, how it affects has effects on our behavior, communication, and social interactions. We can easily say that our built environment has already many proxemic codes and patterns embedded into our spaces where we design them, where we live in them. And Mr. Edward Hall defines this proxemics in 4 zones. The closest one to ourselves, it's called intimate space, and between 45 centimeter and 120 centimeter, it's called personal space. Into your personal space, we only let actually our closest family and closest friends to interfere in that space. And the social space is actually between 120 and 350 centimeter. Imagine that instead of having this webinar online, we were supposed to be in a conference hall, and in that space actually we keep the social distance without being irritated from each other. Following these proxemic codes, actually we could live in public space together until now. But these health regulations are pushing us to really keep the personal space really shut down. So you can only interfere in a public space with people with social space, even with your closest family, like with my mom. I cannot be during these pandemics. I fear that I get closer than 1.5 meter because there is this health regulation. It changes our daily human behavior towards especially our personal space and the way how we will behave in public space, especially in the cities, because the high density is so important, and we may need to find solutions how to reduce this high density. So we need to discover new proximate patterns, not only to understand how people will interact with each other. Actually, these proximate patterns will also define the organization between spaces, streets, buildings, and even the town organizations. So in one hand, we know that how important is our home, but on the other hand, as our civilization in a way require, we are social human beings, and we need to really find solutions for social sustainability, because we all have globally right now a fear. And pandemic, in that sense, will be kind of a game changer, and we will start thinking about architecture in a different way in every scale. So if we go back to Industrial Revolution, actually with the Industrial Revolution, it started to separate the our private space from the public space. So living and working has been separated through the opportunity of moving. And this has been like a physical thing, and this physicality of moving created much high density cities around us. But today, with the help of technology, instead of we are having this pandemic situation, with the help of technology, the physical moving has been replaced easily with digital moving. So currently we are together in a webinar virtual room, and we can able to talk with more than 100 people. They can listen to us, and they can. So we are globally sharing this simulation. These tools, for example, we are right now in Zoom, and this Zoom hasn't created yesterday. It was there before, but we were just not willing to use these tools. But currently, we all discovered that it's easy to implement these things in our daily life. And what makes it easier is actually, of course, the fear of pandemic, plus that we discovered that the technology can be helpful and easier to reduce this density situation. But on the other hand, in post-pandemic era, as architects, when in the post-pandemic era, if we sit around a table to design a new home, a new public space especially, we cannot just sit down with engineers and our client and with certain consultants. As architects, I believe that we will need another way of finding solutions with behavior designers, socialists, with philosophers together. We need to involve these people together in our architectural thinking and finding architectural solutions for especially public spaces. And of course, this situation related to maintain the social sustainability, we must find solutions for less density and balance in the density, which will create a new urban context most probably. I mean, these cannot be the direct solutions, but just minor thinking can propose us that we can have maybe a distributed flexible system, micro environments, micro communities. So we need to start atomizing things into small parts to be able to have this control related to social distancing and to reduce the fear of people, because we don't want to fear from each other. We want to be in a space together, but we want to also put people closer to our personal space, not only to our social space. And of course, the future requires the smart city, and the smart city will need smart design and smart construction solutions. But as we know, if this pandemic continues for a long time, there will be definitely a much higher human labors will be really increase, the cost will increase, and all the sectors, not only architecture, they will adopt the latest technologies into their businesses much faster than we have ever thought. And this will really happen so fast, and all this digital revolution and all this, especially in architecture and construction sector, all these, let's say, robotic technologies and all the other technologies we have been borrowing from, let's say, automotives, from the airplanes and many others will be implemented much easier into our design and manufacturing process. We will have more research centers. We will have more like this kind of environments in our offices. We have been using these tools in our office, but maybe we will start using them even more to be able to gather not only physically in our office, that our employees will travel, let's say, a lot of hours to come to office. Maybe we will really find ways to meet in other platforms. So finding solutions in for the urban context, not only if some of you may already know that as Melike Architects, we have been working on the Seoul Robot Science Museum project since 1 year. It was an international competition which we won. And at the end of this year, the construction will start. This museum is going to exhibit robots, but the important part of this project, it is going to use smart robotic construction methodologies during the construction. For us, this project was a kind of a case study to be able to develop these digital fabrication and offsite technologies to bring them on site in such a scale of the project, instead of we have been doing these things on the pavilion scale, but now we can do it on the in this type of building scale. But in near future, it looks like we will see this type of smart construction methodologies even much faster than in our cities. Because of these labor cost related issues, many companies will require maybe these solutions much faster. So to summarize my especially the hidden dimension idea related to public spaces, as architects, we really need to find ways to communicate with behavior designers, socialists, philosophers, to be able to really design for human behavior, to be able to gather in public spaces to reduce the density. Not only in physical ways, but also maybe in some cases virtual meetings will still continue in VR, AR, and holographic public spaces will become our daily routine. But I believe that it will be really important to find the right balance in between physical and digital. Thank you.
I take from here. Thank you, Melike. I first, before I start the lecturer, I want to thank you to Mr. Radu Teacă for his presentation. Also, I want to thank to Melike. And right now, I'm very honored to invite Davide Maculo, who for 20 years was project architect in the atelier of Mario Bota, with responsibility for over 200 international projects worldwide. And after that, he opened his own studio. Notable works for the architect include the VIP Art Foundation mixed-use gallery, apartment in Gangnam, Seoul. I hope South Korea, the new Asuta Hospital in Israel, 5 stars hotel and spa facilities in Greece, the headquarters Janssen AG in the Obereit, Switzerland, private museum in South Korea, Sino-Swiss Center in Tianjin, China, several houses and housing in Switzerland and abroad. I'm very honored. Please, Mr. Davide Maculo, please welcome.
Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining. I want to present you one single project today. Just let me open the windows that I can use this. I want to present you just one project. And using the metaphor of nature, I like to think that architect is like a gardener that plants his trees, and he doesn't maybe see the entire splendor of the trees that he plants in the forest that it's already given. I like to think that we build, even in urban spaces, where, please request control. The architect has a gardener that plants the trees in a forest that is given, but I like to think that this forest, it doesn't exist. I like to think that when we do a building, we work on a virgin land, because we don't want to interact with maybe too many mistakes that human has done. So a territory always has its own soul. This pandemic time reminds me very clearly on this concept of nature, man seeking nature, man belonging to nature. And it reminds me to a word that we have lost during the years. Between 20 and 15 years ago, the word ethic was a word that has been extensively used by the intellectuals. And it was intensively used by intellectuals at that time because they were feeling that this word was already being disappearing, but while we were selling ourselves to a more commercialized world. So it was a kind of sense of guiltiness. And since 15 years, we don't hear this word anymore. And we want this word back on the scene. We want this word to be part of our life, to have a more ethical planet. Architecture is the link between the DNA of a place and its future. It is as well the first shell out of our body that relates to our senses. In this concern, we have these two territories, these two ecologies. One ecology meant in the broad sense, which is the historical, the economical, the political, and the traditional and the geographical territory or ecology. And the second one is the inner ecology, which is the psychology of the people, which is the senses, which are the senses of the people. So we work to put in balance these two ecologies. And we work on a sentence that Bruno Munari synthesized a meaning of art and architecture in a great way, which is civilized people lives in the midst of their art. And here we start with our dream that is a project that concerns several projects in a remote valley in the Swiss Alps. Valle Calanca it's called, where we started 3 years ago by building a sculpture, a urban sculpture that is part of the heritage, cultural heritage of this place, which is as well a house with the conceptual artist Daniel Buren. This project, let me go, this project in the town of Rosa made us start the creation of a foundation for contemporary art in this village. The idea of the foundation is that we produce art and architecture joined together as pieces of urban life, as art to live every day. It's like public art, but it's not only a sculpture in the garden, but it's the entire village that becomes an artwork, so that we can influence in positive terms the life of the people that lives in the village. And this is about enriching a cultural heritage, providing a social growth through sharing work of art and politics together, to make the population participating, to build their own environment, and influencing the economical and cultural destiny of a region, and resisting against the theory that we have to produce architecture that relates human to machines. We don't. We relate humans to nature. We need nature to live within. So we want to stress the debate of the use of the rural area beside the use of the cities, because rural areas still are 98% of the land of our earth compares to the 2% of the land used by the cities. So we have, we work on these two ecologies, the inner and the outer ecologies. In the projects of the foundation, that are a dozen of projects that we are working on right now, we have 3 churches, and the 4th will come next year, of the Anglo-Swiss artist David Tremlett, that changed the face and the fate of 3 beautiful churches of the 16th century. Then we have 10 other artists that will design houses to live within as patrimoine, as heritage of the community, starting with the first, which will be Not Vidal. We provide an archaeological park that is the reconversion of the walls of the Renaissance period of the village. We are working on starting a new Biennale of Art in 2021. So I think that within this, the art has stressed as well the political authorities to bring up a new idea of a natural regional park to enhance the beauty of the biodiversity of this region. And within this as well, the citizens, they started to give to the foundation their properties to develop pieces of architecture joined with art to enrich the environment they live within. So it's a kind of growth that doesn't look only to the goal of putting art in a valley to spread out from a local meaning to a global idea that we don't give it for granted that the democracy in this little valley is confined to a little valley, but it's a message that can be delivered and spread out throughout all the world. So the citizens, they participate by raising hands if they want to have a certain kind of art or not. And this talks to the citizens of the valley is one of the core of the project that we are doing that allow people to live in the midst of their art, but the political and the social community works together with the artists, with the architect, with the urban planners to resonate and to give meaning to their region in a way that this region can enrich itself, change the economical destiny of the entire region and bring it to a brighter future that have seen in the past a depopulation of the valley, but in the recent years, like think about 400 years of depopulation, and suddenly in the last 10 years, the population of the valley almost doubled. And we have seen so many people during this pandemic stay at home period in this valley, thanks as well to the technology, but a technology that allows us to enjoy nature, to enjoy the 98% of the land of the earth that is untouched, to take care of it, and the 98% of pleasure that the people can find again, thanks to the technology, but not suffering from the technology. Thank you so much.
Hello. I have to make an announcement for the audience that the first part is finished and we will go on with the second part of the event, the debate with the moderator session. Okay, thank you.
Hello back, everyone. We will start now the debate. It will be questions directed to our speakers. I want to thank all of our speakers until now for the words and thoughts about architecture in this pandemic time. I would like to address to the audience that they can submit questions that at the end we will address to all of the speakers. Just type the question, and then me and Mr. Evanescu will ask the questions at the end of the sessions. I would like to start first with a question for Ms. Malike. In your presentation, you talked about technology. Do you think that because this is the pandemics with the virus with his own nature of transmission? Maybe we'll have, because I'm sure that this will end in a couple of months. The thing is how architecture can give an answer to a future pandemic which might have another kind of transmission. Now we are talking about social distancing because the virus is transmitted in that way with the airflow. But perhaps, thank God, no, we will have any kind of pandemic that will have something else. So if we focus on social distancing and this thing is over, and something else happens, what will become of architecture? Do you think, because for now this pandemic is the main thing is the airflow. So probably if we are talking about technology inside of buildings, inside of spaces, is the airflow. Do you think that the architecture could change in a matter that we will have machines that will provide health, and we will more or less lose the everything else that goes with the architecture? This is a pessimistic scenario.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to stay on the optimistic part, actually, because the way how I see, especially specifically this pandemic related to this social distancing issue, actually it reminded us and it taught us how our living environment is important. And it also showed us the possibilities, the existing possibilities of the existing technology, which we have been not really using properly globally. So in that way, we all are learning that there is this possibility that we don't need to be stuck in the cities altogether. We can live and work in different ways through the help of the technology. This is, I think, one of the, from my point of view, like the optimistic view to really what we can learn from this pandemic. But at the same time, it puts in us the fear of social space, like, because we don't want to I don't want to go to a shopping mall at all. I don't want to even go to a plaza where there are many people together, or I cannot really imagine that I go to a high-rise building with a couple of elevator and thousands of people are working there. I want to really find solutions to have the balance. That's why I say that we need to really develop the balance between physical and digital. So we discovered the existing potentialities of the technology, but at the same time, this pandemic or another future pandemic, which, as you say, we don't know what kind of effects they may have, we discovered that we can see positive sides of the technology to embed into our work environment. But at the same time, I think this will change in a way this big economical circle. So that's why I believe that this microeconomics and micro communities will become important. As also Mr. Davida was saying that, you know, in nature will become is important, and this pandemic reminded us like how nature is so important and how we can, you know, in a city when you live in a, let's say, people were okay living in a 20 square meter housing because for them the public space or outside was also part of their home. But now, today, you know that actually your balcony or your garden is more important than the public space. Or imagine that, in my case, I cannot really imagine when it will be the next time that I go to a concert hall and I pass by, let's say, 15 people in a row to sit in my seating in the middle. Like, you know, these things, or taking an airplane, which we all, I believe, that travel a lot because our projects maybe all around the world. But imagine that taking even an airplane or going to in an airport, like these things are becoming more problematic. But we see also the positive sides of technology. But for the people who are really physically producing, for them, actually the company owners are really realizing that human labor is becoming so expensive, then they will also find solutions, you know, to implement these robotic technologies in whatever sector they are much faster than we think into their businesses. And these things, what they implement, actually are already existing, but they were avoiding to use these technologies. So this pandemic is changing, that's why the human behavior, in my opinion, and we will all facing this situation. But yeah, so I cannot say directly that architecture has a solution for that, or the architects can have a direct solution for this, but we need to have, that's why, more interdisciplinary roundtables together, especially, let's say, in these seminars, webinars. Also, you need to also include not only architects, you need to also find, you know, other disciplines to take part in these conferences. I think we need to really develop ideas, not only the materiality of the architecture through spaces, but we really need to think about the balance between the physical and digital space. That's what I say.
Thank you, Malik.
Okay, I have a thank you. Thank you, Martin. I have a question for Davide. Actually, you said you start your presentation with architect as a gardener. Something like that. You started with a garden. And this reminds me of a saying from Louis Barragan. And he said, always a house started with a garden and then other spaces. So I remember this when you said about garden. So in this context and also this pandemic euphoria, what do you think about home, about garden, and about the need for, the need of the persons to create his own world inside of his house? What do you think of this needing?
It's a beautiful question and thought. We designed a hospital in Israel, the Suta Ashdod University Hospital. And when we designed the hospital, we designed first the garden because the experience of the patient and the people that works at the hospital. And I'm talking about the hospital because it's an extreme case, and maybe during this pandemic, it's quite interesting topic. We started designing the garden because the experience of a home, and the hospital is the home of everybody, starts in the moment that you step out the car or the bus. And what you get from this moment that you get out from the car, this already influences your mind. And what we did, we designed the pathways to go from the car into the hospital, using the botanical heritage of the State of Israel that has two big issues, two big themes. One is that the people are fighting against the desertification of the land, survival. And the second is the importance of the tree that gives life, that relates man to nature. So the passion that they come to the hospital, they already passed through the history of the natural heritage of the state. They approach the hospital, and the hospital is built with the stones that have been extensively used to build the houses in the State of Israel. So they recognize that the hospital is the house of everybody. And here we are in the public space. The same in the house. You have to give a lot of meanings to approach a house, to approach a building, so that you influence with reasons, joy, passion, everything that people that approaches. We have then inside of the hospital, we have put pictures of flowers that are the flowers of the state, so that the people can enjoy the beauty of flowers on one hand, and on the other hand, they feel a sense of belonging because the people come from all over the world in the house of everybody in Israel. So they feel they have a common ground that relate all of them together as human, but as well relate them to the nature. And this is not given through the intellect, but just through the senses. The people feel it, like we did for the children, that they come to the hospital, they see lights going on, trees, magic forest, and they forget about one moment about the sickness, and they are more relaxed. The architecture is from afar is a shape. You just recognize a shape, and you see that the reason why this shape is there. And we want our building to be like trees, because we want our building to give the feeling that they grow from the ground. They are rooted in the historical ground of the place, natural historical ground. When you go closer, it's a lot of details that appears, a lot of reason that comes out from the lines that you draw before by doing the project. And when you go inside, it must be a world that tells you everything, that makes you feel good, because the ultimate goal of architecture is to make people feel at ease in the space you build. You have three sequences. You have the public space, where you relate to the people with distancing or not, doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. And then you come to a private sphere. So the space take a shape of a minor quantity of people. And then you go to an intimate space. So we design not only the spaces, but the sequence, the flow of the people, the perception of the people that goes from one situation to the other. And when you reach the intimate space, there you can meet the technology. There you can jump into your dreams and fly with your fantasy whenever you want, but you are protected. And the same of a house is a city. The city, the architects doesn't have to build only cities. They have to build the trees. When you are in the forest, you go under a tree and you feel protected. You go under 3 trees and you feel projected. You know, and this reaction to the feelings is what we are exploring in this project in the Kalanka Valley. We are now working on a project of 10 structures on the pathways that are my passion. We work on 10 structures with the wood cut on place, with the people of the place, and we are going to build spaces that relates to the feelings of the people, so that the people walking in the mountain, they will enter spaces that will make them discover their own feelings and make them understand that a space truly, really strongly influences the mood of people, the senses of people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David. Thank you. So, Florin, now or no?
Okay, it's me
Martin.
again.
Martin,
yeah, it's
thank
me
you
again. I have one question for Mr. Radutako. In your presentation, you stated that the collective housing will be a role model for the future, perhaps. And I think that is something that is more likable. But I want to know what are your thoughts on what will happen and how to deal with all the buildings that are existing now in the urban areas that have that are traditionally closed buildings, but today we have this trend that even in those traditional buildings we integrate some public space, etc., etc. For example, a bank is a traditionally closed building, and now the trend is that even banks have some public spaces. And what will happen, for example, of shopping malls, the now mixed-use buildings, etc., which more likely will be empty for a couple of months, maybe more. Maybe even what Ms. Altenschik was talking about, the human behavior will change. I don't know. Perhaps no one knows until now. But what are the thoughts if this happens? How to deal with those buildings which are plenty in the urban matrix?
It's a very difficult question.
Yeah, I know.
We have to think and to start to think. I believe a lot of years, because how I just said in my presentation, maybe the virus will pass, but the threat will remain, for sure. And we have to rethink and maybe to rebuild. Now, meanwhile, when you are talking about these problems, I thought to some drawings from Lebeu's post-apocalyptic regarding the intervention on the existing buildings. Well, I don't know, maybe we'll suffer some redesign of entrances. The entrances will be very important, because the problem post COVID-19, I think, will be this very straight separation between interior and exterior. Interior is the escape, and the exterior will be something very hostile. This is the problem, the main problem in my presentation, because how I said, the public spaces are very important for European culture. And I remind the Acropola, which is the main place where are taking place changes of ideas. This is maybe the dynamic of the European culture and the technology. And maybe in the future, the exterior places, the public spaces, maybe they will remove, I don't know, they are passing through the interior. And the problem with the existing, another problem with the existing buildings, I think maybe they will suffer some exterior intervention. I don't know very exactly. The stairs, maybe I remind now. I'm reminding a complex, an interesting complex in Graz in Austria, made in 70s with suspended gardens. It was a project designed especially for social apartments, but now it's very expensive. But it's very interesting the modality of accessing this building, and there are some suspended streets, and you enter in the apartment directly from the exterior. This in between the hall of entrance, the elevator will be, in my opinion, avoided. Maybe this is a schema, let's say a schema for escape from these points of conflict, elevator, stairs, and other things, to transform this interior in between the halls, the stairs in exterior spaces where the virus maybe is not so powerful.
Thank you for the answer. I think that we should all reconsider our point of view of traditional, for example, shopping malls, etc., and go more what.
Excuse me for a moment, because now you remind me this part of the question. I don't know. I believe I thought about the huge offices building. What happened with them? Maybe they need to be to suffer some reconversions. I don't know, for a different way of learning. Maybe little space for production. I don't know.
Probably
reconversion. This is
so I have one last question for this part of the debate. It will be addressed to every of the participants. We are witnessing, I mean, everyone from our profession. These past years we are talking about a lot. I think that the number one topic is public space and environment. Now we are talking about social distancing, and the distance can be measured with 1.5 meters. The distance that probably was 50 centimeters, so we have tripled this distance. The thing with the environmental impact was that we should have density, so we will shorten the transportation, etc., and we should the cities to be more dense, so we don't use cars, we use public transport, etc. Everything that we were talking about for the past 15 years now is going through water because of this social distancing. What are your thoughts on what are we going to talk about in the future as architects? Because we are talking about these things mostly for this past decade and more. And is this, if we go in this way, that we go with social distancing, we are spreading the city, are we in danger to go with a high environmental impact that will be devastating to this planet? So everyone, okay, Ms. Antishik, please.
I want to ask you for very short answer, everyone, please.
I mean, if this continues in that case, in the worst scenario, I think, of course, like it has to. I mean, we have to really distribute the density horizontally, not vertically. It means that the cities will require to diverse all around and needs a distributed systems. It means at the same time we will, in a way, as a human, it will be good for us because we will be much closer to nature. Our space qualities where we are living, they will increase, in my opinion, for sure. But at the same time, of course, this physical moving must change at the same time with the digital moving. That's why in that manner, as we are living in this simulation all together, this technology will become again like another important issue, because what we have gained with industrial revolution as a separation between private and public, in a way it will combine again. So maybe the public thing virtually will eat our private. That's my, to be honest, a fear. But at the same time, I feel lucky if we get closer to the nature. That's what I would like to say.
I think Melike touched a very important point. Get closer to nature. You know, I like it. But might not be that easy for a metropolis. If you take Tokyo, Beijing, Shanghai, or New York, this is not that easy. But on the other hand, if I think about the city, a building in the city, where in one building you host the population of an entire village. Let's say you have 2,000, 3,000, up to 10,000 people in one building or in one quarter. So what could be that these people, they might not need a huge amount of square meters for their own home, but they might need a common space, a common area, public area inside the building that is the place to meet everybody together. So we have to rethink the cities, not enlarging the apartments, maybe not, as Melike said. For example, at the countryside, you have small houses. It's not true that you have big houses for the people. The people live in small spaces because they have a lot of public space to use and to gather together. Regardless, if you are close, 1 meter, 2 meters, it doesn't really matter. But what matters is that architects, politicians, for instance, we have to give more public space that belongs to the people. Otherwise, what we have stressed up to now with the free economy and the globalization and the density of the city is that you push the people in boxes. They become sick, psychologically sick, because what we have built up to now is a society of people that are not really happy, actually quite desperate. That we have to say, we have to face the reality. It's not that people are happy in the world like they were after the war during the last 60 years. People are insecure. They are more aggressive than before. They feel squeezed. So we need to give public space to the people. We need to allow people to gather. Technology really helps. Now it will start all these gigafactories like Tesla, like, you know, huge things that allows us to produce what we need without laborers, without men living or working in these factories. Where are we going to put the people where we don't need them to work in the factories? They will be at home, but they cannot stay at home all the time, close in one space and just go on with the socials. You know, you have to enhance the idea that the people are, we are born to be together as well. We have to belong to our group of people. And imagine a city that is like assembly of villages where you have a nice, large, generous public space. We need to be short, so I stop.
Yeah, I believe the problem is not, in my opinion, it will be difficult to expand the towns in the nature. My opinion is, and this will be a name of architects and of course of people generally speaking, is to bring the nature inside. This is a problem, to create some each people, each man to have his own little garden, let's say, because this kind of isolation for a long period claim to have this opportunity to have a nature closer, living with the nature all the time. And in my opinion, this is a challenge for us to think about this possibility to create some little oasis of green inside the houses, apartments, whatever. Maybe will be a solution for a conversion of the offices building, which have a lot of glass in the exterior, and which permit this kind of approach to think about this interior garden.
There are already the experiments of having like an office building that produce vegetables to feed all the employees.
Yeah.
And in United States, New York, they are planting all the gardens for vegetables on the roofs. So actually, we are moving in that direction, which is wonderful.
Well, we have to think to Le Corbusier, l'habitation de Marseille, l'unité d'habitation. Ça, c'est...
Yeah, at the end of the day, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all for participating in this debate. Florian, I think that you have your...
So, thank you very much. We are just in time.
Or me,
And
yeah.
So-
Okay. I will announce only the share forum that will take place on the 16th in Radisson Blu Hotel in Bucharest. So far, the confirmed speakers are Sir Peter Cook, Dietmar Eberle, Francisco Mondaro, Bernard Curie, Eric van Egart, Christos Christodopoulos, Piotr Levski, David Makulo, and Ilias Papageorgiou. So anyone who can come to Bucharest on the 16th, we really hope that this will end and the borders will open, so everyone is invited to take attendance to this share forum on the 16th in Bucharest. Florian, I think that now it's your part.
okay, thank you very much, Martin. Maybe you can say something about share how was in Skopje, because
Skopje was without virus, so it was beautiful. Everything without virus is beautiful. Share as traditionally share in Skopje. I think it was a success as the previous two forums. We had a lot of participants, a lot of guest lecturers, and I think we are doing a nice tradition with share. I think that 3 years from now, we are starting a tradition of architecture talks through the Europe. So keep up the work.
okay, thank you very much. We are pleased to have two very good friends of share in this webinar. And I want to say hello to Sheima Ercin. She's the project chief in Şişecam flat glass. And I want to say hello to Hubert Nukovski. He is managing director in Aluprof Romania. So I will start the question and the short dialogue with Hubert. And I want to ask him what is new in Aluprof and what projects Aluprof done in Romania in the last year.
Thank you, Florin. Thank you for the question. Good afternoon to everyone. I could say that Aluprof didn't change much. We are still on. Didn't stop by the pandemic. Working, smiling. What happened? Well, Aluprof in Romania is a Polish company which in Romania is for the last 15 years. During this time, we made many projects. If I will have to speak about those projects, we will stay till the morning. Will not happen today, not tonight. So I'll just choose few the most recent ones. I will brief them a little bit, and then I will let my other colleague to speak. So I will start from something pleasant because the summer is coming. So I will start from the project on the Romanian coast in Mamaia North called Casa del Mar. Very nice projects, which is in the execution now. Aluprof provided their quite complete solution because we provided their doors, windows, and in plus we provide roller shutters to ensure the sun protection. Next project will be Hotel Ibis in Timișoara. We delivered there one of our premium solutions, MB86 super isolated with the hidden sash. I like hidden sash because it gives the nice, very aesthetic look to the building facade. So I could say that this is a pleasant project. In the last few projects, we delivered solutions for the retail industry. We provided our products to the Dene Unu Value Center and the Dębowica Mall. Dene Unu is already opened since last year. The Dębowica Mall hope soon will be opened. Another project, it's the project from Bucharest, the German school, where despite our standard aluminum carpentry, we also provided their partitions, internal partitions, and fire-rated partitions and doors. But anyway, time is running. I would say about my favorite recent project. I'm sure that everyone, at least from Bucharest and the area and from Romania, they know the building. The building which was scaring people for many years. When I came to Romania, actually was very scaring. It's the Magazinul București. I'm sure you all know this building, how it looked before. I could say ugly. But fortunately, it was demolished and recently rebuilt totally. And now we can admire the effect. It was opened a little before the pandemic. I'm very happy that also Aluprof provided their products. So our products were applied during the restoration. Despite complete curtain walls, skylight, doors and windows, we also delivered the fire-rated glazed solutions from 30 to 90 minutes. And now we can see, actually now we cannot see because the Bucharest is still, I could say, the closed for walks and old town as well, but soon we'll be able to admire the final effect. And I'm very happy that the building was kept, was not destroyed, and built in this place something absolutely different. So it was a gift to this Magazine Bucharest for the 19th birthday. During our daily work, we are helping architects. We are providing lots of tools to help them with their job. Technical drawings in many formats: CAD, ArchiCAD, Revit, 3D Max, BIM models. So architects, they can use the correct solution for the projects. So if you need some help, we are open. We are waiting for your questions to help you to provide guides for your daily work. Thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hubert. Thank you.
Bucharest.
Thank you, Hubert. I have the great pleasure to introduce Sheima from Shishakam Flat Glass, who is a friend of us from long time, as they have financed the book that we have presented to you. Hello, Sheima. We would like to know, how did the COVID-19 related situation affected your business?
Yes, hello everyone. First of all, we're having difficult times all over the world, and I hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. Actually, we don't know when this pandemic process ends, but we still keep working from partially our homes and online, giving glass consultancy for architectural projects. As you know, building production is a long and complicated journey that many disciplines work together. And luckily, thanks to the new digital era, as architects, we can work from anywhere in the world where there's a mobile reception. As Shishakam Flat Glass, we believe that each project has its own unique story and unique spatial needs. We help professionals for finding the right glass solutions according to their project's spatial needs. At the design process of the project, we hold online meetings in these days with decision makers. We used to meet in person, but now we carried out our meetings to online platforms. We make technical analysis and calculations as we did before. And according to the calculations and project requirements, we offer right-class solutions. So we continue to contribute prestigious projects throughout the world with the technical support we provide. And I hope we can get through these hard days as soon as possible and we meet each other face to face. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaima, and thank you for your amazing contribution, and keep on going with your projects.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you soon. See you soon in July in Bucharest, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back, and I'm very honored to present Mrs. Martha Thorne, who has been the executive director of the Pritzker Prize for Architecture, and in this capacity she works closely with the jury. However, he shall not vote in the proceedings. She is currently dean of the School of Architecture in Madrid, Spain. She served as associate curator of the architecture department at the Art Institute in Chicago. And she's the editor and author of several books, including the Pritzker Prize for Architecture, the early 20s, and the author of numerous articles for architectural journals and encyclopedias. Please, Ms. Martha, hello. Hello.
Me?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me. It's really quite a pleasure to be here with you today, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the first part of the symposium. I thought there were incredible ideas, certainly thought-provoking, and can lead to lots of debate. Again, to Share Architects, thank you so much for the invitation. And I've entitled my short presentation today, Architecture, What Role in the Future? And I want to just talk a couple minutes about prizes, the profession, and education. And it's like so many, questions that we have. We really don't know what the future will hold. And this is some lesson that we're learning because of COVID-19. The challenges of COVID-19 have affected each and every one of us and have called into question our understanding of day-to-day life, what is normal, what we can expect, and what we can rely on. Certainly the scale and the impact and the speed with which this pandemic has spread throughout the world reflect an extreme situation. And it is tempting to talk about architecture in relation to COVID-19, but I'd like to argue that the evolution of architecture has been going on for a long time, certainly decades, and perhaps even more than that, maybe even centuries. But when we look at the pressures being exerted on architecture today, they are quite different. And I'd like to mention technology and the rapid change of the digital world, globalization, urbanism and the rise of urbanism, and also the onset of shared economies. And today I'd like to address the question of architecture and what role for the future, as I mentioned, based on prizes. Because of my role at the Pritzker Prize for about the last 15 years, the profession, because I've had the privilege of following architects and their work from around the world for many, many years. And finally, in terms of education, where I have my day job and my heart right now. I'm trying to control I'm having trouble changing the, oh, double click on the screen. Okay, there, excuse me. The Pritzker Architecture Prize, founded in 1979, has had the same mission since its inception more than 40 years ago. And the idea is to honor living architect or architects through built work. So in other words, as evidenced by buildings and spaces that have been constructed, the qualities of excellence in architecture on one hand and contribution to humanity on the other. And while over the years, the prize has always had the same two goals, the independent jury interprets these in the way it sees fit each year. Now, prizes in general, if we look around the world, prizes in general, we see more and more architectural awards being established. For example, there are many, many awards related to countries, related to foundations. Also today we see a rise in specific purpose awards, awards for sustainability, awards to women. But I think one of the biggest changes that we can see in prizes throughout the world is the idea of rewarding new inventions, not so much looking at an individual, not so much trying to recognize an architect or architects, but looking at the outcome and rewarding new ideas, rewarding inventions, regardless of who has created them. Now, the Pritzker Prize, when it was established back in 1979, and if we look at the citations that the jury wrote, we can see, we can see that they gave awards often to individual architects. They mentioned such things as their talent, their leadership, the quantity and quality of buildings that they had created. And I think this was one direction clearly at the beginning, which also prizes reflect the context and the society in which they exist. So it was normal that Philip Johnson, Frank Gehry, or Renzo Piano would be honored as starchitects. But I do think over the years we have seen an evolution in the Pritzker Prize, and I think it will probably continue in the future. For example, when Glenn Murcutt won the prize in 2002, there was great emphasis on the sustainable qualities of his works, their integration within the landscape, their sensitivity to the local context and climate. Others more recently recognized service to humanity in the forefront. For example, Shigeru Ban, we know of his extensive work in disaster relief shelters around the world, or Alejandro Aravena in 2016, who created the concept of half a house, realizing that shelter is much more than just a roof over one's head, but is a source of security. It's the possibility of opening up doors to future investment. It's directly linked to a family's economic, social, and physical well-being within a community. And most recently, in 2020, we've seen two architects, Shelley McNamara and Yvonne Farrell, from Ireland, who have been rewarded with the Pritzker Prize. I think that if we look back over the years of the Pritzker, in recent years, we will see more variety in the outlooks and approaches of the architects who receive the awards. And I'm particularly pleased when there's an element of the collaborative nature of the practice, the fact that the structure of the office can propose an alternative to the mainstream, or when the architects who are rewarded see the built environment in a much broader or holistic way. Clearly, Service to humanity and excellence in architecture can take many different paths, and I think that this is the way of the future. Now, if we look to the profession, there have been enormous pressures put on the profession in recent years. Clearly, technology has changed the way we approach architecture, anything from design to our presentations to clients, to how we look at building materials, the construction process, the chain of value between natural resource and the building component. It even has invaded the financing of buildings. Fintech is a popular word that many of us use. The urbanization has presented challenges not only for architects, but for many people. And how do we make humane environments that are dense? How do we make new cities and revamp old cities in a way that responds to current but also future needs? And let's not forget about global warming and sustainability. These are directly linked to our physical environment as well as our natural environment. The construction industry is one industry which is particularly notorious for waste. It's particularly notorious for not responding to the needs of the environment and not responding to the needs of the inhabitants. And then finally, one other aspect of the profession where I see there is a need for change has to do with the structure of the profession. Often we have architectural offices that are small, they work in an isolated way. We're still looking for the clients to support us, to give us jobs, whether public or private. And we don't always have time to do research, to create knowledge, and then to share it. So as I look to the profession, my hope is that we'll expand the role of architects to go way beyond the idea of architectural design or the small office where they become an author of a project for a particular client. I hope that we can see larger multidisciplinary teams and structures that are collaborative, or maybe a consortia of offices that come together for different projects when needed. I hope there's also a renewed effort for our professional associations to create and share knowledge, not just defend the status quo and the norms or the accreditation procedures of architects. And of course, if we want to change the profession, and we hope we can change the profession, education has a large role to play. And I live this sort of every day in my life as Dean at IE School of Architecture and Design. We're a private institution based in Madrid, yet our student and faculty population come from over 100 countries throughout the world. And I feel the challenges almost every day about preparing students for an uncertain future. Many of us who studied architecture were taught by teachers who simply followed the way they had been taught, who had also followed, their teachers had followed the way that their masters before them had taught them. Clearly today, we need different skills, we need different ways of understanding the profession, and we need different and more varied roles for the future. Of course, I'm a great believer in that we still need some of the traditional tools, whether it's books or screwdrivers or drills. We need to use our hands as well as our minds. But as we look to the future, I'm reminded of this World Economic Forum discussion about the top skills that are needed in the future. And one thing that has given me great hope about this is that many of the top 10 skills are ones that are intrinsically in the process of architecture and design. So as we look to things in the future, and especially in the face of COVID-19, I would say let's keep the best of architectural education. For example, that process that it has the ability to bring together lots of information, to analyze complex situations, to imagine alternative futures with a constant process of criticism and feedback. Let's keep the best of studio culture, of having students and teachers learn from each other, of being able to look over the shoulder of one another to see what someone else is doing, not for the purpose of copying, but for the purpose of understanding. I also think the collaborative method, as we've seen in the expansion of the Pritzker Prize to 2 and 3 winners at a time, the belief that many people together or several people together can create a more positive outcome than an individual on his or her own is an important way to go. And then finally, linking to that is the question of diversity. Not only diversity in roles, but diversity in backgrounds, diversity in gender, diversity in ages and outlook. With COVID-19, I think we have a very special challenge, and I think more than ever, architects are needed. And this has to do with my belief that architects, more than any other profession, can link together the physical, natural, and digital worlds. And clearly, we need those three together if we hope to face our current situation of COVID-19 and the other uncertain futures that may be waiting for us. Thank you very much.
Hey, Marta, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Before Martin and me ask you some questions, I would like to invite all the lecturer and keynote speakers to address the question to Marta Throne.
Hi, Marta. We are following something quite interesting right now that was born in the recent years. And these are the appearance of foundations that works with architects and universities, like the Norman Foster Foundation, and which is quite interesting, actually, what they are doing right now. And I think they are in Madrid as well. No? And I've seen and I follow them because they are investigating a lot, and maybe they don't have that much appearance in the public, which I think so. I mean, it's the public is the architects, but that the debate that you raised up could be easily shared with the public, because at the end of the day, every citizen is looking for his own space to live within. And the topic of the architect, as you mentioned, we have the privilege as well to link a lot of aspects of our life, if not all the aspects of our life, together with the technology and the system that will come in the future. Like there could be a very nice question from the public to say, how can be my house or my building built by robots through artificial intelligence? These are all, I mean, these are kind of topics that can make the people more involved in the profession of art, in building our own environment. Of course, everybody has to work, has to deal with what he can, you know, with the middle. So we are working in a small valley, but we are bringing all the best artists in the world in this small valley. They love to put their energy to build up another future in the valley. We are going to build a crocodile 30 meters long with 32 artists that works together and to design a land art that becomes like a venue space. And so we are doing a lot of effort to, because we are allowed by the politician of this valley to work with them and the population. But we are really working hard, wishing that this could be an example of sharing with citizens about our thoughts and not to keep our thoughts just, you know, between us. So how can we spread?
Davide, I think you made 2 points that I wholeheartedly agree with you. One, the first one, when you talked about the public doesn't always really understand what architects do, and you mentioned engaging more the public. I think that's a key element. I think that without going into why it's like that, if it's historical reasons, it's how architects see themselves, how the development of the profession, that the designer was good, the developer is bad. So there's a lot of reasons that there's misunderstanding between the public and the architecture profession. I know perhaps it happened in the rest of Europe, as in 2008 with the crisis in Spain. Architects were blamed for the crisis. And perhaps in part they did have some responsibility, but they were blamed much more than they should have been. So I think the architecture profession has to somehow engage more with the public, more, as Maliki said, with other professions. They have to not worry about the definition as an artist or the sole author. They have to see themselves more as part of the collective of citizens, but with very special methods and very special ways of approaching problems. And I think that architects need to be much more entrepreneurial, not only to work with foundations. And as a matter of fact, Elena Foster and I had an email just yesterday together. But they have to engage also with industry, schools with other schools, schools with private practitioners, to find those areas where maybe a client doesn't exist, but maybe a good idea can find the client or find the public budget to be implemented. And now with COVID-19 more than ever. So I think that's one thing. I think the second point you made about being examples, I think it's beautiful to have a village with art, but thank you so much for saying that that's not the final goal. It's one goal, but a second goal is to be an example for other places, to share that knowledge, to share that experience, so others can benefit from what you've done there. Because if your only goal is to have a little village in Switzerland, you know, it's not enough. It's not enough. But so I thank you for making it a broader goal.
You know, Marta, one thing that I really enjoy about what we are doing, it's a very humble project, but as well ambitious. We are influencing a lot the children that grows up in the village. And all the villagers, all the citizens, you know what they talk about since 3 years in the restaurants? Art, architecture, environment. And this is amazing, wonderful. I mean, the architecture and art, contemporary art, with those big names, they came on the table of having a beer together and talking with Daniel Buren, with David Tremlett, big galleries, and all together gathering, like now with social distancing, but physical social distancing, but not a caste social distancing. It's quite interesting, and this is a model that could be in the cities as well. Cities are a group of small villages at the end of the day. I mean, if you live in Seoul, at the end of the day, you live with the neighbors as well. I was living there, and you meet with the neighbors, and you live with them. Not only, it's not that much different. It's just higher.
Yep, exactly. It was interesting, a comment in the debate before, if you'll allow me. I thought it was really interesting talking about density. But there was one thing that bothered me about that, because although the broad measure of density is people per square kilometer, there's also the time factor. And if the density changes throughout the day in different places of the city because of different uses and different time. So I think I'm a great lover and a great believer in cities. As a matter of fact, my own educational institution was hoping to inhabit a 36-story tower in the fall, which now will not happen as they thought. On the other hand, I think physical space and public space that was mentioned before that we need more is a very powerful idea. Yes, we need public space, lots of it, but we also need to change our schedules. We need to change our understanding of where we work so we don't have to travel as much, so that we can walk and ride our bicycles or our motorcycles or scooters. I also think that we have to see, as I'm seeing now, the city of Madrid, as adults, we can go out from 6 to 10 in the morning. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the streets are not full, but there are people in the street, which never happened before. So we're using our spaces throughout the day, which means it's much more efficient. We're taking better care of our space, public spaces, but we should also do it for our buildings. We shouldn't leave a house empty or a building empty 14 hours a day, leave the offices empty or shopping centers empty 14 hours a day. We have to learn how to use our resources, our limited resources, whether it's buildings or public space, in a much more rational and a much more diverse way than we've been doing in the past.
Yeah, in a shortage of time, I will ask you one last question, then we will go with the attendance's questions. You talked about price, profession, and education. About the profession, you said that the profession as it is now, it has to change. And I definitely agree that these traditional studios that we are used to work are not functioning well with the reality outside. My question is, what do you think does the education, because I think that you've mentioned about the topic that the education also has to change. In what way do you think the education should change? And mostly, what's your opinion? What is the role of education? Is it only to educate students or to have a large participation in the public life and promoting architecture?
That's a really difficult question.
I know.
I think if we're talking about changing architecture education and to limit it to that, I think that there has always been the idea from accreditation boards and from the profession that schools of architecture should train architects to be professionals. And intrinsically in that is a very rigid concept, because people tend to want people in the future to be like them. I mean, we see this in juries, we see this in boards, we see this in doctoral dissertation panels. The closer that a subject is to the judges, the more comfortable it is for the judges. So our structure of education and accreditation doesn't want to change. I think that in architecture schools, clearly we have to educate students about their responsibilities of the profession. They're the ones that are going to be impacting the built environment. They have to understand concepts of safety, of sustainability, of history, criticism, art. They have to understand that. But I think the problem with our education is we're telling, or through the accreditation process, we're saying, study all of this and then become this type of architect, this professional. And if you're a design architect with your own studio, then you're way up here. But if you're a sustainability consultant, or if you're a teacher, or if you're a writer, or if you're maybe not even interested in that, then somehow you don't make the grade. So I think it's a balance between the discipline of architecture, which is extremely serious, extremely important, and the education for broader roles. And that's what I tried to mention, these ideas of critical thinking, of embracing technology, not learning technology, but understanding it, to modify it, to see other opportunities. How do we collaborate? How are we more entrepreneurial? So those are the things I think are lacking. I mean, and my school is the daughter of a business school. We can talk about the economic climate. We can talk about demand, about things like that. I'm wondering how many schools of architecture talk about the context, whether it's economic or the demographic or things like that. So I think we need to allow for multiple outlets of our students.
Thank you for your intervention. If I may add something to the topic, as listening to you, I recalled the book of Yuval Noah Harari, the 21 lessons for the 21st century. And then the main thesis of his book is that the challenge that we will face in 21st century will be to face not exploitation, like in 20th century when workers were exploited in industries and in business, but irrelevance because of robotics, because of automatization, because of artificial intelligence. So related to education, how in your school do you tackle this matter of relevance and of this relevance matter of in the profession, that and how architects are trained to tackle this matter?
Yeah, I think it's, again, as I said before, I think it's the design process. And we all like to say it depends on the questions you ask. So asking the right question, it's not concentrating on the final product alone, but the inquiry first, being able to explain why something is needed, justifying or explaining why you've taken a certain approach to a part of the physical environment, explaining the impacts. I'm not so worried about technology. I think if architects embrace technology, it can get rid of a lot of our wasted time. It can help in analysis. It can help in safety and construction sites. It can do so much for us, and then free up the time to do what architects really do best. Because AI, it only can interpret what we give it. So therefore, these complexities and connecting the dots that seem very different and very disparate is a real human, a human quality. So I think, again, it's being critical thinkers, having a broad culture, understanding architecture and in a deep way, but not being married to one goal in terms of the profession, to be able to sort of jump around to different jobs or professions depending on what's needed in the 21st century.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Okay, Martha, thank you very much. Now a new Q&A session will start for the public with questions for the public, but first a jingle. Okay, we are back. So before I read the questions, I want to answer you, to make you a question. You said something interesting about professional association. We are a professional organization and so on. How do you said something interesting and I forget to write down what you said. Okay, please, in just 1 minute, please explain to us what do you think?
You're asking me. I think professional organizations they need to transform themselves as well, and we've seen this. If you look at the AIA, RIBA, even here in Madrid and Spain, the professional association, it's not needed to give licenses for building. It's not needed to collect funds for architects. It has to do something else. So I think professional associations, more than anybody, should take the lead. They should look to the future and try to provide knowledge that's needed by architects in the future, the place for creating and sharing knowledge across geographies. Just things like you're doing with the webinar, I think, is one example of a great thing. And I also think that they should be pushing education to also expand its mission. And I think professional associations could be fundamental in helping the public understand, breaking down the silo and helping the public feel that architects, politicians, the public, industry, we're all on the same team, and how can we do that?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, first question. First question is for Melike and from Ioana. How do you think that robotics and artificial intelligence will influence architecture in the near future in the context of the pandemic?
Can you hear me? Okay. In my opinion, with the help of this smart construction methodologies, which we call also robotic construction, maybe methodologies, plus if you add on the artificial intelligence on this, actually they will help specifically, in my opinion, for the very high cost human labor works, and especially also in the very safety related construction sites. They will have quite
something happened with Malika. Sorry, she'll probably be back. So I think that we should go with the second question. Will there be developed a new code, ACA regulation for designing buildings? So what do you think about that? Will there be need of changing the regulations according to the pandemic? So anyone who wants to answer this question is welcome. Ms. Taka?
Yeah, I can express my thought. Actually, what I was telling before, when you have when you build something, it's not about architect. As Marta was saying, architect, they have to get out from their little studios and forget about their ego, because we are, at the end of the day, we serve the community in our best capacity. And the interdisciplinarity that started a long time ago, a few decades ago, about architecture, that has been implemented in few states of Northern Europe in a very wonderful way, where when you build a piece of city or even just a building, you sit on the table with the investor, the promoter, the city, the politician, and the representative of the citizens. And you share the common good of doing a building. And you discuss on the table before to start how far the speculation, the win has to be for the developers, for everybody, but how much important is the public space that you endanger or you create with a new building or a new quarter. So this is maybe what we should pursue, what we should follow, is that every time we build something, we have to take care. We have to do it with the community, with especially politicians. And we have to never forget that the city is the living room of the people. It's not, the people are not, should never be confined in their homes. When I get out from my home, I should feel still I am in my home, just with a lot of guests. But this is what the rules should, from now on, maybe it's not enough this period of time to think all of this and change the rules, but we really have to involve the citizens, the collectiveness, in building their own space. And the public space must be something that welcomes the people. It has to be the home. When I get out from my studio, my home, and I walk in the city, I feel home. It's my city. I sit somewhere, I feel it's my place. I don't feel like I'm a guest of. The rest of the people are guests of mine, like I'm guest of theirs. So, and this, maybe it's like the right way of looking at things. Just look at things another way. It's not, we are not building the public space, and the public space is for everybody and nobody. No, the public space is for everyone. If you put this in the rules, fantastic.
Excuse me, but the question, maybe it was related with the COVID-19 after this pandemic, no? To change the rules.
Yeah.
Maybe in our team we have to invite over the engineers, structural engineers, pipes engineers. I don't know. Maybe we have to invite doctors. It's for sure. In this multidisciplinarity, we need the experience of the doctors till now.
Thank you, Emil.
The moment, okay. Thank you very much. New question from Anka Login for all the lecturers. Marta, Davide, Radu, and Melike, can you offer us a piece of advice to all young architects? How do you stay connected and faithful to on designing with our hands and our hearts, not just with our minds, in these times when we pursue more and more to the digital world? Thank you.
I have one word: cook. Go to the kitchen, cook, make meals, and offer that to your wife, your friends, whatever. That's the best thing you can do.
Okay. Radu, what do you think?
I don't know. I believe we need now to be very rational. We need mind now.
Okay. Melike, please.
I think patience, like they need to be patient enough and really learn how to deal with time.
Okay, thank you. And Davide?
They asked the question very nicely because they already gave the answer. They said, we want to draw with heart and passion. They already know how to do it.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah, excuse me, I want to
yes.
ask the moderators, how is your opinion? How is your advice, Emil?
Martin, please.
Just to read the question again.
Again, yes, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, I think that Ms. Thorn what said, I completely agree with her. Not only of the pandemic, but I completely agree that they should cook, they should live, and while they are living, just think about architecture and space. What are their needs, not just what they read in the books. Because in my studio, when a young architect comes, I see mistakes that even for example in a house there is a mistake in the kitchen which my mother wouldn't do, even though she's not architect, because she has experience, living experience. So leave it, and then everything will come to you.
Okay. Me, I think yes, we have heart, we have skins, we are very sensitive, but should be very entrepreneur too. And I think we discussed a little more about pandemic. Too much more pandemics. Maybe okay, cooking. Okay, thank you, Florine. Thank you, Florine. And now, and Florine, now I think it's...
Okay, thank you very much for
Okay.
the webinar.
Finished,
I want to invite maybe Martin or maybe Emil to have the conclusions for today. Short? Very
Martin?
short.
One short conclusion. I think that we should all start working, but never forget what we really do as an architect. We don't have to go now with the pandemic and change everything that we know. Just as Mr. Radu said, just think for a little bit, and maybe more patience, like Melike said. I think that the conclusion from this is that we really need public spaces, more public spaces, wider public spaces, in my opinion, because in Skopje, even now outside it's crowded, the sidewalks are crowded with people that are sitting, because we have a culture to be outside. We love to be outside. So now everyone is outside until 7 o'clock when the lockdown begins. So I hope everyone will be okay and go through these pandemics. I want to thank all of the participants and the audience, and of course Florin and Share Society for the invitation to moderate this forum. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Emil?
Okay. I thought we finished. First, I have the good impression that was like 3 directions. One is a very technological direction, which is very good, with the digital and so on. Other is like entrepreneurship direction, which includes all. And other more existential direction and sensitive and so on, how to get faced to these pandemics. I want to put the finger, if you like, to the idea of innovation, because all the moments like this could be the start, the beginning for new innovation. You know that in the design, object design, industrial design, one of the most important steps is when you design for disabled people. So when you design for problems, big problems, maybe these pandemics will be a big problem that give us some very interesting innovations in the future. And I think this is very, very good. I thank you all, your lecturers, and also Florin. And please be part of the competition. Don't forget to take part to the architectural competition in the pandemics. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.